and welcome to the 5th episode of TILLY, the interactive lupus link for you, an episodic series brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of New England. I'm your host, Marisa Zeppieri. Some of you might know me as LupusChick, and I'm really excited to have you here for our 5th episode. I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine, and I know that you're going to fall in love with him and his company, Brendan Amaru. He is the founder of LupaVita. They are a company that focuses on bringing awareness to the nutritional deficiencies that are often seen in people that have lupus. So Brendan, thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm going to actually throw this over to you. I'd love for you to tell our viewers a little bit about your background, your educational experience in nutrition, and anything else you want to just tell us about.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Marisa. I'm so happy to be on and be able to talk about lupus from my perspective, as well as from the perspective of looking at diet as well as nutritional deficiencies. I'll kind of go from the beginning, how I got involved with lupus. I had loved ones that was diagnosed with lupus, specifically my mom, and I grew up not directly having it, but having a loved one that did have it. So I understood it from a perspective of a loved one, and seeing someone kind of go through a struggle, a lot of changes, from seeing someone that is really important to you go through a number of different symptoms as well as different things. I'm from Boston originally, so being from the Northeast in the wintertime, it would be a lot rougher, but I've kind of adapted and grown and seen that at a young age. And really, from not understanding it, maybe throughout high school into kind of college, I really took a bigger grasp when I actually did go to school. I studied nutrition and kinesiology at the University of Miami. And I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field or nutrition, or I was thinking about becoming a physical therapist at the time. But then I ended up moving out to San Diego, where I am now. And I ended up working with someone that was in the nutraceutical community, and fell kind of into what I studied in school. And I kind of looked back into what my mom was going through with lupus. And when she was diagnosed, she took a more of a holistic approach, and ended up looking at her vitamin. She went to go see actually a naturopathic doctor, and she started doing a lot of yoga, meditation, not just looking at her prescription medications, but looking at alternative forms of treatment, and looking at her diet, looking at vitamin deficiencies. We would have our medicine cabinets filled with all different types of supplement bottles, from everything. And at the time, I didn't really know too much about it. But kind of what I ended up doing was I ended up reaching out to her doctor, and who was a rheumatologist, as well as her naturopathic doctor at the time. And I had this idea because I had a friend in the nutraceutical community, and I was like, I wanted to make a vitamin specifically looking at her deficiencies. And at first luckily enough, they were open to it. So we ended up making the first formula specifically for her, looking at her vitamin levels, looking at her vitamin D levels, B12, magnesium levels, things that you do see as commonly deficient in lupus patients. And we ended up creating a formula specifically for her. And she ended up taking it for about 60 days. And she went to her support group. We ordered 24 bottles originally. And then she ended up spreading it into her support group. And those 90 bottles were gone like in very quickly. So we were like, wow, this is pretty interesting. So I kind of took a step back, and I worked with another rheumatologist at the time, and we wanted to discuss and take a little bit deeper research into lupus. So we ended up looking at a broader, really perspective of what diets and what also deficiencies that are seen throughout. So I started working with lupus experts. We ended up starting, this kind of evolved into our company LupaVita, where we have a specific vitamin looking at deficiencies in lupus patients, but we ended up taking a step back and we made out a whole medical advisory board. And this was almost 5.5 years ago, and we've kind of transformed into now where we're kind of a lupus movement. We do a lot of walks, we do advocacy programs, we're in front of Congress, and we just continue to expand, as well as our main goal is to be an educational platform for deficiencies, diet, and really kind of underlying causes to lupus, instead of just looking at it from, like I mentioned, a prescription-based approach. We wanted to look at it from an underlying cause approach.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I mean, that's what I love about you and your company, is that obviously the majority of lupus patients do take prescription drugs, but I think looking at things holistically, doing, you know, complementary medicine, alternative medicine, different types of exercise if you're able to, if you're not obviously in a severe active flare, but what one person can do, you know, they might be able to do 10 minutes of walking or yoga, and another person might actually be able to go running or something like that. So I think it's important to look at every aspect and see what you can actually bring into your life to help you. I was really excited to ask you on this episode because we're specifically focusing on diet and nutrition, and also things that could potentially help with fatigue. That's one of the most common symptoms that I hear about with lupus patients, and that most lupus patients struggle with. So I'm thankful to you for looking into all of this, and for your mom for trying it out for all of us at first. I'm a fan of LupaVita, I've tried it myself. But I really want to get into the actual like deficiencies. I mean, we hear a lot about often like low vitamin D levels because so many of us cannot be in the sun, but I know that there's more to that. Also some things that are anti-inflammatory, since this is an inflammatory condition. So yeah, if we can sort of dive into those specific deficiencies when you worked with these doctors and what you were finding, that would be great.
Of course, I'd love to. Yeah, so specifically to kind of touch upon what you first mentioned, not every lupus case is the same. Everyone's a little bit different. So it's not like a one vitamin fits all approach. It's not also a one diet fits all approach. Everyone's a little bit different. So it's super important for someone to kind of experiment and see what works for them, as well as get tested to see what vitamins they are deficient in, as well as try different diets to see what works for them, inflammatory marker wise. But looking at the top few common deficiencies that we see the most throughout lupus patients, I've already mentioned them on my last thing, but it was vitamin D, B12, and magnesium. We see those being profoundly deficient throughout many lupus patients. And then also too, we have a number of different things that, exactly like you said, number of herbs, as well as things to look at inflammation, fatigue, skin and nail and hair health that we see throughout lupus. But to kind of dive into specifically looking at fatigue, for example, we look at like B complex vitamins. What we have in LupaVita is vitamin B12, as well as folic acid. And with vitamin B12, it goes ahead and helps with energy. We've actually switched over. There's two forms of vitamin B12. There's phenylcobalamin, which is a fat soluble. You see it mostly in probably about 90% of vitamin B12 supplements or B complexes. And then there's methylcobalamin, which is actually water soluble. So you can actually just take it with water. It's not necessary for food to digest through. It goes ahead and lasts longer, as well as goes ahead and is more bioavailable than other kinds. I put that in LupaVita, as well as other things that help with inflammation. We have turmeric in our formula. We've worked with many doctors that really praise turmeric, and then also adding that with black pepper is a huge thing to help with its bioavailability. It goes ahead and absorbs much at a higher rate when you do add that black pepper in there. So that's super, super important. Also, we have cherry extract that we looked at. We worked with the LFA in regards to, we did a whole seminar in regards to looking at antioxidants, and cherry extract was one of the main things that we wanted to go ahead and get into our formula as well, just because of its antioxidant properties. And then also looking at vitamin E, zinc, helps with skin health as for rashes, as well as alopecia that people might suffer with. And like I said too, it is a natural form, and looking at things naturally at different symptoms. Also, another thing too, omega-3s. We see a lot of people taking fish oil. Krill oil is something that's being studied right now. The LRA is doing, I believe, a study now looking at how effective krill oil is against fish oil, and seeing how that will help with lupus patients. But specifically in our formula, we look at flaxseed oil powder. So we wanted to go ahead and get omega-3s somehow into our formula. And we were able to go ahead and do that through that, mixing things with fish oil and other vitamins. Usually you have to take that separate because it is an oil substance. So we did look at those alternatives. As well as taking different tests too. I think a main thing is figuring out, going ahead and get the right test. There's a few things you can do. You can go ahead and measure your B12, vitamin D, and magnesium tests. It's called a 25-OHD blood test for vitamin D, and you can kind of see where you are level-wise, and then go ahead and supplement according to that. We also recommend looking at diets and things as well, in regards to doing high nutritional vitamins and looking at diets. But for a vitamin perspective too, if you look at it from a vitamin perspective, it's really like, I always say, it's kind of like a house, right? You have to go ahead and build your foundation. So by the food that you take in and the vitamins that you take in, you're really setting this beautiful foundation to go ahead and then use food and nutrients in to go ahead and build really your body up. So like your body is like the house. So you build that foundation with the vitamins that you're intaking, and then from there you can build up from the foods and things that you add on with. And it's just super important to kind of look at lupus from that spherical perspective instead of linear. It's like, okay, where's my diet at? Where is my vitamin intake? What are my triggers? What are causing this? Is my diet causing this? Is it sunlight that's causing this? Is it vitamin deficiency? Obviously, the number one deficiency is vitamin D. Having SLE or discoid lupus prevents you from going out in the sun. So we see almost 90% plus being deficient in vitamin D. And there's debates and studies that go back and forth, and the benefits of vitamin D in regards to inflammation is profound. So it's just something to look into, and things that you had and test and see. I really think it's being aware of that first, and then going ahead and regimening your diet and supplementation based upon your specific deficiencies. But yes.
Well, you definitely gave us a ton of information. Thank you. There's a lot of areas I want to touch on from what you just said. So first was, I want to make sure people are aware, like they can actually go to their primary physician. I do it usually twice a year, and I get a ton of my different vitamin levels checked to see sort of where I'm at. I'm a huge believer in supplementation and vitamins and like functional medicine in conjunction with some of my prescription medications and also my diet. I eat a very specific way. And once I was able to get all of these different areas working with one another, I personally did see a decrease in my medications that I needed, and also a decrease in my symptoms. I don't know if I told you a long time ago that I used to be in a wheelchair. I used to have a nurse at my house taking care of me. And through the years, as I'm, having lupus longer and understanding my triggers, like you mentioned, better, and things that my body was lacking, I've been able to improve. So I want people to be aware that, one, if you haven't already asked your doctor, you can ask to get these levels checked. They're easy blood tests. And I love the ingredients that you're using, and I want people to understand, turmeric. We hear a lot about turmeric, but I don't know, maybe not everyone is aware that once you add black pepper, your body can absorb it at a much higher rate, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And then also with magnesium, magnesium is responsible, and obviously you're the nutritionist, so correct me if I'm incorrect,
Yeah.
but I know that it's responsible for so many processes in the body, and it also is linked to like a decrease in pain. It can help you sleep. I mean, these are some of the biggest issues that we deal with as lupus patients, are sleeping problems and having body pain. So I'm a huge fan of magnesium. I love that you have that in there. So, and with the omegas and the flaxseed, choosing the flaxseed, so that makes the product vegan then, correct?
Correct. Yes. We
Okay.
we use vegetarian capsules, as well as try to make everything and source everything from being plant-based. So yes, it is vegan, as well as gluten-free, soy-free, non-GMO. So
That's awesome. Thank
mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to touch on a little bit of diet. So this is something that I found very intriguing over the last couple of episodes. So we had on a friend of mine, Dr. Maggie Cadet. She's a rheumatologist here in New York City. And we also had on an RN that spoke to us about like communication and stress relief, things like that. But they both were talking about leaning more towards a heart healthy diet for lupus. Now, in the 20 years that I've had lupus, no one has ever really specified a diet. It's like they just said, you know, obviously eat healthy, but it's almost like they were nervous to specify a specific diet. But it seems like that tide is changing a little bit. And the reason that I have been told for this is because where infection used to be one of the major risk factors of death for lupus patients, now it's actually the top is cardiovascular issues. This is what Dr. Maggie explained to us a couple of weeks ago. So can you talk a little bit about like diet, and because I want people to understand that, yes, this supplement can do amazing things for them, but if we're still eating really poorly, you know, and that's the only energy source that our body has, then the supplements can only do so much.
So specifically, yes, diet and taking vitamin therapy go hand in hand. They're imperative to work together. So everyone that we do speak to and talk to, we always suggest looking at your dietary changes first, or before you do vitamin therapy, or do them at the same exact time. The reason being with this, looking at diets and specific diets, is it'll work so much better and you'll be able to absorb so much more. And looking at heart healthy diets, as well as higher protein diets, we've been talking to a lot of people, and I've looked at different number of things, from the Atkins diets, the paleo diet, to plant-based diets, to vegan diets, and kind of what works best. And like I mentioned in the beginning too, everyone's body's a little bit different. So depending on your goals and what you're looking for. But one that has stood out to me the most is looking at going completely plant-based, and also cutting out gluten and cutting out soy. I've been seeing throughout these variations of different diets, the ones that have worked the best have been looking at looking at plant-based proteins. Like I said, cutting out soy, as well soy and dairy, and looking at cutting out gluten as well. And specifically with cutting out meat, for example, we've been seeing a lot of different things in regards to inflammation markers going down. You can get those tested as well. So if you do start a diet too, definitely go in to your either rheumatologist or nutritionist if you have one, or a naturopathic doctor if you have one, and have them measure inflammatory markers. Because with that, then you can see how well your diet is doing. And also, hopefully, you're going to be feeling it externally, but internally as well, you'll be able to go ahead and see those inflammatory markers. Also, with that as well, with not eating a lot of meat, that will either clog your arteries. You're having better blood flow throughout your whole entire body, which reduces inflammation, as well as goes ahead and goes ahead and gives you a little bit more energy instead of your body going ahead and digesting and taking in those enzymes to really break down either meat or heavy foods. It goes ahead, or trans fats, it goes ahead and allows you to go ahead and have more energy to go ahead and use throughout the day, rather than doing than, you know what I mean, using energy somewhere else. Also too, we've been doing a lot of things that looking at different smoothies, fruits, vegetables, leafy greens, hearty foods, things that are really, we call them food for the soul, because they do come from the ground. So definitely recommend things like that. Also avoiding trans fats and avoiding fast food, avoiding fried foods like French fries, things that can clog arteries and cause either cardiovascular problems, circulation problems, things that can go ahead and just kind of create not just more maybe flares with lupus or symptoms of lupus, but then also kind of like you said and touched upon, we're seeing the leading cause of death in lupus patients looking at cardiovascular health or being cardiovascular related rather than just inflammatory related. So finding a diet that both hits one, inflammatory markers to go ahead and make you feel in your quality of life be significantly greater day to day, as well as also long term, looking at long term health. It's some of the things that we is needed. And just from working with different lupus patients and hearing different stories, I go to the support group here in San Diego from the Lupus Foundation of Southern California, and I hear so many stories of people doing this, and it's absolutely changed their lives. And it's just something too, the more I hear it, the more the more you hear it, it's like, it's everyone has it in common. So it's just important to, even if you have never done it too, it's like, how do you go ahead and try that, you know, or see if it works for you? Obviously it's completely hard. I've converted over to a plant-based diet, but I loved meat in the beginning, and it's extremely hard because it's like you still kind of have cravings for like a cheeseburger or you want something else. It's extremely hard to do that, but you have to take it step by step. You know what I mean? If you are going to go do this, it's hard to go cold turkey right off the bat. It's like, how do you go ahead and maybe eliminate? I was eating like every meal, I was eating like something with meat. So it's like, how do you do it? Maybe 2 days a week, you cut it out, and then slowly and gradually go ahead and start to cut out those either trans fats or high fat foods, things that can cause a little bit more problems. It just takes some time. So do it at your own pace, and also experiment. Learn a little bit about every single diet. You can also, on our website, LupaVita, we have a blog with a number of different types of diets too that we kind of go over. So you can kind of learn more about that as well, and either go ahead and substitute some things from your diet, see you add more things. And I've always said too, we have a lot of people, or I start to talk to people that are newly diagnosed, and it's so important to start to understand your body. You need to understand what you're putting in your body and how it's going ahead and coming back and telling you. Your body, you need to listen to your body in regards to inflammation. A naturopathic doctors do this. One of our doctors is so huge on this. He looks at doing a stool test. That's the first thing when someone comes in, if they have lupus or another autoimmune condition, because he wants to see what you're taking in your body and what's coming out of your body. And that will go ahead and do so much of what you can make dietary changes or supplementation or nutritionist facts that you can go ahead and add into your diet that will go ahead and either give you more things. And that's, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but looking at lupus too, you got to see different things. I went to the American College of Rheumatology, and I talked to a lot of rheumatologists because I'm like, I know methotrexate isn't heavily prescribed looking at lupus, but we see it in rheumatoid arthritis, but it depletes you of folic acid. So if your doctor rheumatologist doesn't put you on something like that, you're going to go ahead and deplete that gradually to the point where it's like you're not going to be able to get out of bed, not because of your lupus, but because of the medication you're on. So it's super important to kind of learn about the side effects, educate yourself in regards to the medications you're taking, to go ahead and still receive a balanced diet as well as all your vitamin therapy to go ahead and really live the best life that you can with lupus.
Well, I'm glad that you actually mentioned the different diets, because that's something that I always try to share with people is, like you said, take a look at every diet that's out there. I know some people that follow the autoimmune protocol, some follow leaky gut diet, paleo or plant-based. Obviously, if someone has kidney issues, their diet's going to be a little bit different when it comes to protein or juicing and things like that than someone like me that, my kidneys are not affected with lupus. But so I'm really heavy on plant-based diet. I also am really big into juicing. Those were like two of the things when I was in the wheelchair and I was really sick from a flare for about a year that helped me to get out of the wheelchair. It was very slow. I didn't make a lot of changes at first just because, one, I didn't have the physical energy to do it, as much as I wanted to at first. But the more I kept doing, the better I started feeling, like, over time. But I'd say within, I try to tell people within about 3 years, I was on 12 medications and I went down to 3. So to me, that was a huge win. I also felt better. I had a lot more energy. Like when I do plant-based and I stick with it and I do juicing, I'm a huge fan of juicing. I really have a lot of energy, but it comes with, needing that energy because you're making a lot of your stuff from scratch, right? So you have to put the work into it, and it definitely can be a little overwhelming at first. I always tell people there are some amazing documentaries out there that give a great glimpse into some of these diets. One of the first ones I ever watched, and we have no affiliation with any of these, but I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, which they have a urticaria, chronic urticaria, very similar in medications that they take to lupus patients. And they were followed by a team of doctors, these two gentlemen. That was like a life-shifting documentary for me. And then I went over to Forks Over Knives, and then I just recently watched The Game Changers, which is all about plant-based, probably one of my favorites. So I want people to know, like, there's so much information out there, and they may not follow just one specific diet. They may, take pieces of different diets that work for them. I'm also, you mentioned getting a stool test, and it seems like, okay, well, what will that tell me? That's something I did a long time ago when I was working with a functional medicine doctor to try to get my gut in order because I was always having stomach issues. So the different strains of bacteria that they were able to see from that test and get me on, a protocol of probiotics and gut supplements, my stomach has been amazing for 3 years. I don't know, we would not have been able to figure out the specific things without that test, like in the amount of data that we got from that test. But these aren't things that we are normally broached with or that come up in like our primary care office visit in that 10 or 15 minutes. So I think it's really important, and that's why I'm so grateful that you're here and we're able to talk about these different things so people can have their prescription medication, but also look at some other alternatives to help them feel better. So thank you for sharing all that information. And before we leave, I want you to tell everyone a little bit about what you do in San Diego, because I know that you've been involved in some of the walks. I know that you had partnered with Exogen. They're actually one of our series sponsors. We love Exogen. So yeah, I mean, I love that you take a role in a lot of the education and awareness. So if you can just tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. A big thing that we've done is really kind of change from just being a vitamin supplement company really into more of like an activist movement, and also looking to empower and educate people. So really looking at different lupus groups. We work with it's kind of awesome being an independent company where we can work with all the different nonprofits. We work with the Lupus Foundation of America. We work with the Lupus Research Alliance. We work with Lupus Foundation of Southern California locally here in San Diego. Exogen Diagnostics, which is fantastic. I know Brian from there. And they're really leading the way at looking at different tests for identifying lupus and looking at different biomarkers with lupus and SLE. But yes, from this kind of activist movement we've put on a walk here to try to raise awareness, as well as raise money for research. We've kind of pioneered that here in San Diego. It was here before a little while ago, then it left. So we wanted to go ahead and try to bring that back, because there is a large community in Southern California, especially San Diego and Orange County. So we wanted to bring that back, which we were able to. We were able to just finish our second year of that. Last year we went to Congress. This year it was unfortunately canceled because of COVID. But we went in front of legislators, congressmen and women, as well as senators, just to educate them in regards to what lupus is, as well as the need for more funding for NIH funding, which was an unbelievable experience. Just to go ahead and share my story, share what we do in the community, as well as kind of share what lupus is and how it affects all of us. I felt like I was there on behalf of everyone that was diagnosed with lupus, and it was just such a very empowering experience. So I definitely plan on continuing to do that, as well as continue to do that with us as a company. And I'm so proud of our company for doing that and kind of making that transition. So and also working with different partners with you, I feel like we've learned so much, and being able to kind of come together and really transition from being a vitamin company. We really turned into a support group too. We have people that call in and we're always here. So if you want to talk about lupus, you want to talk about diet, you want to talk about supplementation, we're here to have an open conversation with everyone. And I really feel like we've really gravitated that towards learning it from either nutritionists or functional medicine doctors that really take on more of a individualized approach, rather than just a 15-20 minute doctor visit. We're not doctors by any means, but being able to be there for support is just so huge. And if we can give some advice or change your way of thinking, or go ahead and be able to help you live better and manage your lupus better, that's our ultimate goal. So
well, thank you for taking that role and something bigger as far as education and awareness, and really being involved, even though you don't have lupus, just being so involved, and also for taking that initiative to help your mom. And then it just grew into something else, like just probably bigger than you ever thought in the very beginning. But before I let you go, I would love for you to tell people the website, how they can contact you, any of your social handles, just so they can follow you and things like that.
Of course. So the website, it's LupaVita.com, LupaVita.com. You can give us a call too. Our number, you can call our office. It's on our website. It's 888-852-2102. You can also send us an email as well. My personal email is brendan@lupavita.com. And we also have a chat box, so you can always reach out. Anyone at our company can help too. We have specific customer support reps that go ahead and look at specifically different things, and who are experts in lupus as well as vitamin deficiency. So you're more than welcome to talk to anyone, but you can ask for me as well, and I'm more than happy to talk. And you can reach out whenever.
You're amazing. Okay, Brendan is so cool because he just gave out his personal email. You might get so many emails. Thank you.
I'll take it. Let's go. The more I can help, the better. So
that's awesome. Well, I just want to thank you, Brendan, for being here, and thank you everyone for hanging out with us today and talking about nutrition and diet on this episode of Tilly. Next week, we're going to actually look at dermatology and the skin and what's going on in the research. We're talking to an assistant professor and a researcher over at UMass Medical School. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week. Take care, and thanks, Brendan.
Thanks.